Hello creative friends, I hope this finds you well and ready to be inspired. Before I get on with the project, I wanted to thank you for the amazing feedback I got on my last video. It seems many of you are interested in learning how I shade with color pencils, so stay tuned for an upcoming video on that topic. Lately, I've been into mandalas. I find them quite fascinating and therapeutic. They might seem a bit intimidating, but they're really quite easy and fun to make once you know a few basics. So in this video, I will show you how I built a circle mandala. The first step is to find the center of my paper. I'm working on a 6 by 9 inches piece of watercolor paper. It's 140 pound cold press, and as usual, all the supplies will be listed in the description. Once I've identified the middle of my page, I trace 2 intersecting lines. The foundation of a good mandala is actually the grid, and for this I'm using a compass and a protractor from a geometry set I bought at my local office supply store. It's nothing fancy and it's quite affordable. And using the protractor, I line up the bottom center lines right over the cross point I created on my paper, and holding the protractor in place, I put a tick mark at every 10 degrees, so 0, 10, 20, and so on. I trace the line there for the circle, but it's not necessary. And I only do this with the upper half circle. Next, I divide the circle into 12 equal parts, or pie shapes, by lining up the tick marks with the center and drawing a line right across as if I have a complete circle. And to figure out how to divide the 12 parts, I draw the lines at every 3 tick marks, or 30 degrees. So starting from the horizontal tick mark, I count 1, 2, 3, line up that tick mark with the center, and then draw the line. The next part of building the grid is to add concentric circles, and for this you can use circle templates like the ones that I'm showing you right now, or compasses. I prefer to use a compass because you can have any size of circles, you're not limited, but the templates work just as well. The geometry set that I have comes with 2 different compasses. One has already the lead built in, and the other one I can insert a pencil or a marker, whatever I want to use. Then I am taping the paper onto a self-healing mat because that will make it easier for me to poke a hole in the middle. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that I have a very solid center point to anchor the compass in. I'm showing you here the compass wants to already go right into the hole, so it's just more secure that way. And then I draw a circle in the middle. Of course, I start from small and then I move outwards. And at this point, I don't really have a definite plan. My center point is kind of always the same size. I don't like it too small. I can add a smaller circle at the end. I can just like draw a dot. And then once I have a couple of circles, I will draw more angle lines. The reason why I don't go all the way like in between, like at every 10 degrees with my lines, is that I don't like to have my center too complicated. If there are too many lines intersecting in the middle, it just makes it a bit confusing. So I'm going to draw a couple of circles like that, and then once I have enough, I can add the other angle lines, and I do the same as before. I line up the tick mark with the center, and then I just draw my line, not completely across. I'm going to skip 2 circles in the middle. So once you've done tracing all those lines, that's basically it. You're done with the grid. And in my opinion, this is really not complicated once you know how to proceed. And hopefully the steps that I just mentioned will make it easy for you to dive into the world of mandalas, because I think they're so much fun. It is now time to doodle, but before I get into that, I just want to talk about that piece that you just saw, which was supposed to be last weekend's video. Unfortunately, because I was not pressing the record and pause button in the right sequence, I only realized it when I went to edit that the last half of the video was missing. Combined this with a card that was full and some B-rolls I was filming with my phone, which again, most of them were not recorded because I thought I'd press the record button. It was just basically a big old mess. And by the time that I sat down to edit the video, it was 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night, or Sunday morning as it turns out. And I'm going to show you the piece at the end. Yeah, that's why. So here are 3 markers that I have in my stash. They're not the only waterproof markers available on the market, but these are the 3 that I personally have and tested. And the reason why I'm using these is so that I can watercolor over the doodles that I'm doing right now. Now, I have also done, because I've been on a mandala kick lately, so I've experimented quite a lot. You can do your doodles all with just the pencils and then watercolor over that. The problem with this is that those lines going across will show, because it's very difficult to just erase the lines and not mess up the doodling. So that is why I decided to go about it this way. So once I'm done with all my doodling, then I will be erasing the pencil lines and then watercolor. And you'll see me add a few more circles as I progress through the drawings. That's because I sometimes need more guides. This is a good example. I wanted to draw leaves, and if I had gone all the way up to the next circle, that main leaf would have been too tall for my taste, and so that's why I keep adding circles. The thing about mandalas that you have to remember is that it is very dependent on those lines, the grids, the repetition of the shapes, the symmetry. And I'm talking about symmetry very loosely here because I am not one for exact symmetry. If there is an inexact symmetry, that would be called asymmetrical, but not really. So maybe I should say uneven symmetry. I don't even know. It doesn't make sense, but all this to say that I have squiggly lines. I have lines that are not equal, and that's fine with me. What I'm looking for is an overall symmetry, not having every single doodles or shape done precisely. I hope this makes sense. The other reason why I'm not aiming for precision would have been a good word. Yes, precision, is that I'm doing these exercises. I'm doing the mandalas, all the doodling that I do. This is what grounds me. This is what allows me to be in the now, in the present. When my mind is engaged in these types of exercises or repetition of shapes, my mind is free to focus on auditory stimulation. So when I do this kind of work, I usually have either an audiobook playing in the background or listen to music. And it's a known science fact that when you doodle and you listen to something else, your mind is really engaged in the listening portion of it, which is kind of strange when you think about it. But to me, this is the perfect way to forget about all the traumas we're living right now, the bad stuff that's happening all around the world. We need to disconnect. We need to retreat in our happy place. And for me, this is the best way I know how to deal with everything that's going on right now, because I'm really focusing on what I'm hearing, and I'm really focusing on what I'm seeing, which is what I'm doing. So those two senses are very much engaged, and I completely forget about what's outside. So I hope this makes sense. I'm just sharing this with you because I know I'm not the only one going through this mind overcrowding. I don't have the right words, but I think you know what I'm getting at. All this to say that I find mandalas and doodling very therapeutic and very beneficial. I did not leave every single steps that I did actually. So I'm showing you every parts or every design that I'm using for the mandala, but not every pen stroke, because the video will be too long. So you've got the idea of each of the designs, and the rest is just repetition. So I'm drying the ink as much as possible so that when I finally add the watercolor over that, making sure that nothing will bleed. Although these pens that I showed you are supposedly waterproof, sometimes when you put a lot of ink in one spot, it takes a little bit of time to dry. I'm going to secure the painting over this glass cutting mat that I have with artist tape. I know a lot of you have mentioned washi tape, but because I'm going to be using quite a lot of water, the washi tape has a tendency to come off the glass. It stays attached to the paper, but then it lifts off the glass. So I'm using this artist tape, and I just use a bone folder to burnish it, I guess, onto the mat and the paper, especially where the two tapes cross. I always make sure that I go over these parts with the bone folder. And I'm going to spray the paper a little bit with this water mister, and I also spray my watercolor. The colors that I'm going to be using are phthalo green. I do believe it's phthalo green. I will have all the colors listed anyways in the description. I'm mixing it with a bit of green gold, phthalocyanine turquoise, and rose of ultramarine. And then, of course, the G1, the gold. So the way I add the colors is kind of sort of random, but not. I am targeting specific spots, especially over the doodling part, but the rest in the background, I just faded into nothingness, I guess. So I will saturate my brush, use the full saturation over the design, and then I rinse my brush, but not completely, and then I use this dilution of the paint to just spread the paint around. The reason why I went for these bright and bold colors is that I didn't want to do exactly what I did last week, which you never got to see. But it was for me, it was for myself, because I don't like to paint the same things twice, and I needed to make it more interesting for me. So that's why I decided to do it with a different color combination. The design is almost the same as the one from last week with slight variations. So now I have like a neutral one and a bold and bright. I quite like the way it looks right now with just the color in the background, and I wish I had left it like this, maybe just gone over the black lines, but I started painting some of these shapes in, and although I do like the final piece, the I had a better feeling before I started painting, is basically what I'm trying to say. So I'm still I am forever experimenting, but I think I don't know, I liked it better before I started adding more color on top. The gold is fine. The gold is always fine. The gold is always at the perfect place. But yeah, I wish I hadn't added more color on top. But it's done. It looks good, but I don't have the same feeling than when I first saw it when the colors were dry. I was really happy with the piece. But that's that. I'm using a number 2 round brush by Silver Black Velvet. It comes to a super sharp tip, and that allows me to get into the nooks and crannies. This part here is filled in with Payne's Gray. I didn't want to use black. I find black is a flat color. It's not even a color, but it's flat. And so I just wanted to have something a little bit more interesting to look at, and Payne's Gray is always my go-to. But this part is quite tedious. So if you're not into that kind of finicky details, what I would suggest is that after your watercolor has dried in the background, just go over the drawn lines and just reinforce them with more markers, because although the marker is water resistant, it has a tendency to not to fade, but it's not as pronounced because you have some color over top of those lines. So I would just like reinforce the lines. Maybe I will do another one with just maybe a layer of, or not layers, but a little bit of gold accents, black, and maybe some glitter pens. Yes, the way I did the original piece. So going over the lines with a more black pen makes everything pop really, and it's a good excuse or a good way to fix some mistakes, reshaping some of those areas that were kind of ambiguous as well, without going crazy. Like, you know, like I said, I'm not going for precision here. But just helping it a little bit. I'm using a gel pen for this because I'm done watercoloring, so it's okay. I'm not gonna add anything liquidy on top. I prefer the precision of a rollerball pen. I don't think it is considered gel pen. I don't know. This is the Signo DX. Maybe it is gel pen. But it has a rollerball, and for me, I've always preferred rollerball over felt tips. This is the Jelly Roll by Sakura. Just a few white dots. Just there's so much color. I needed white somewhere, but it's basically done. I'm just adding a dot of gold in the middle. What would look good also in the middle of this mandala, and I've done it on a practice piece, is to add a tiny rhinestone in the middle. It's quite nice. I'm just using the heat tool to remove the tape. It just softens up the glue of the tape, and that reduces paper tearing, although it's very difficult to eliminate paper tearing altogether. But if you take your time and you pull like perpendicular to the paper as opposed to lifting it, it minimizes it. So there's the piece. I think the white border helps all the colors. It's very colorful. But I love the patches of gold in the background. And yeah, it's different than the original one. It was a good experience. And here's the original one. I find I get a sense of calmness when I look at this piece as opposed to the other one. And as you can see, there are more areas where you only see the black doodled lines, as opposed to the one I just did is pretty much filled in. So on this note, we are done. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out the description for the list of supplies and for the links to my social media. Thank you all for watching. I'd like to thank also my awesome patrons for their support on Patreon, where they have access to exclusive video content and lots more. They make it possible for me to keep producing videos here on YouTube while they support my creative journey. So we are very grateful for them. Please stay safe and healthy, and be mindful and accepting of others. Keep creating, and I will see you soon.